Bill Sang, and this is the Bill Sang Podcast. Thank you for joining us for our Made in Findlay segment. I am here with the owner of Heavenly Pizza, Joshua Elchert. Josh, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, Josh, are you from Findlay originally?
I'm actually not from Findlay. I'm born and raised in Tiffin. My grandparents lived in Findlay, so we were in Findlay about every weekend kind of hanging out over here, but not from Findlay.
Okay, so you spent quite a bit of time in Findlay. Do you currently live in Findlay?
Yes, yeah, we currently live in Findlay.
You do. That probably makes business a little bit easier, right?
It really does. It makes doing things in the afternoon and between shifts a little bit easier because you don't have the commute.
That's good. Okay, so AJ's Heavenly Pizza, also not native to Findlay.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about AJ's origins?
So the origins was actually my father-in-law, John Hill, was the A or the J for the AJ's, and his best friend in high school is the A, and he's full Italian. His name's Ignazio Abalone.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that's a mouthful.
That's why they didn't go with that.
Yeah, exactly. So they worked pizza shops they're into high school and just after high school and stuff up in Michigan where they're from. I think it's Wyandotte, Michigan. And they got saved and they were on fire for God, and they wanted something that they could do to kind of help spread the word and have their own ministry. And they really liked pizza. So putting the scripture on the box and on all of our advertisements, that was their ministry. So that's kind of how it started. There's a whole story about wrong turn, right place, how they ended up in Tiffin. There's a lot of coincidences there that, you know as well as I do that there's not coincidence. It's just a hand of God really directing them to where they're supposed to be. But yeah, so they started in Michigan, they ended up in Tiffin in 1981.
I don't know how many people would make the connection between ministry and pizza. That's very fascinating. Yeah. But nonetheless, I do have to say that my dad, he's an optometrist here in town, and that's actually what he used for his ministry too. I mean, when you get into an environment where you're giving somebody an exam and they sit down in your chair for you to check their eyes out, they're not going anywhere, and so they get to hear the gospel as well. So I mean, that's one of the things that I think is really cool about this segment as well, is that people of faith, seeing why they're passionate about what they do and how they use that in a way that is for God's kingdom. So that's really neat. So I should have put two and two together there, that yes, of course it was founded for the sake of ministry purposes. Heavenly Pizza with the dove, John 3:16 on the box. Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty clear right there. So how did you get involved? I mean, you said it was your father-in-law's,
father-in-law.
Right? Okay. Yep. So how did things get rolling as far as you being involved with AJ's?
So my dad actually, when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, started delivering pizzas there as a second job. So he delivered pizzas, so I'd go in and hang out with him at the pizza shop and go on deliveries with him. And just our two families just got really close, and we started hanging out all the time and just, got to know his daughter. Started working at the shop. And then
no, I don't know. What happened when you got to know his daughter?
So I worked there, and I kind of always wanted to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of different things I tried. I thought accounting would be good because I like math. Didn't like that. I went to Sentinel Career Centers over there, which is like Millstream for Findlay. So I did building trades. I thought that'd be kind of cool. And then I just started doing pizza. I just ended up being pretty good at it and just was there for 10 years, and then we opened up over here.
So what was that spark moment where all of a sudden it went from making pizzas to, I could do this. I don't know exactly how that whole transition from being a worker to being an owner happens, but how did that happen for you?
Gosh, I think it was it was over several years. I think it was over time. It wasn't necessarily like this, I think I'd rather just go do this on my own. I think it just kind of happened over time. When you're managing anything, retail or restaurant, you are putting in a lot of hours. And, my father-in-law has 4 kids. So eventually, whenever things get passed down, it's passed down to the 4 kids. And I'd like something that I could leave to my children. And obviously splitting a fourth of something, and I have 5 kids amongst 5, it just gets to be pretty small portions. So it was like, It was something I was already putting in the hours, so I just thought it was natural for me to start my own. So I had something that I could leave for my kids.
That's great. Yeah, and that's another great thing about business too, is that's something that you can leave a legacy. I mean,
Exactly.
You started off with the story with how it was founded, and it was within family, and it's been passed down to family. And I'm guessing you're probably foreseeing that in the future it's going to be a family business that can continue to be passed down through the generations, God willing.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that you were very interested in entrepreneurship. What was appealing about it to you?
You know, I can't. I mean, probably because at the time I was a kid, so I probably just looked like most people. Like, oh, they own a business. They probably have lots of money. Like, I don't know. I think that might have been part of it, but I just kind of that being your own boss and directing your own path a little bit is always intriguing as long as you're willing to put the work in, which is kind of that's really what separates people. I think is some people are cool working the 9 to 5, and other people they want a little bit more than that, or they don't mind doing more than that. So I think sometimes that's the difference.
So, and you also have people that work for you as well. How does that play in kind of purpose for life?
I think it all plays in. I mean, I think it really all ties in. Things that just kind of has developed as my own personal faith has developed, and just naturally start to. I mean, I hire high school kids, and some of the crap that these kids have to deal with. It's stuff that, I mean, I'm not super old. I'm pushing 40, but I'm not like. And the stuff they do, I have no idea what they deal with until they start working for me. And then you get to mentor them, right? You can help them get through some of the stuff. And they just deal with so much garbage that's in the world right now. And, you know, some of them have people that they can confide in and talk to, and some people don't. So the fact that, you know, and you're able to share your faith with them. You know, I mean, that's what we lean on for security and that kind of stuff. I mean, they just don't have that. So that's just been something we've been able to slide into seamlessly. That's just been a really good motivator.
You know, that's one of the things that I was kind of naive after I graduated high school. For some reason, I thought that everybody was a Christian. And that might sound weird. I literally thought everybody was a Christian, and the people that weren't were just bad people that wanted to be bad people. And it never dawned on me that so many people actually do not have faith in Christ and do not have religious beliefs and do not have a support system like a family, you know, to be able to help them out. I remember I was sitting in a Bible study at Cleveland State University, and we were going around the room sharing prayer requests. Both my parents saved. They brought me up in the faith, and I appreciated it and all that, but I never really thought much of it until we're going around this prayer circle. And everybody in this group is saying, yeah, I need prayer for my parents. They're not saved. I need prayer for my parents. They're not saved. I need prayer for my parents. And you know, to think about how many children, like you said, have parents that are not saved, and to think about what the circumstances have got to be for them. And also, I coached wrestling as well at Findlay High School for a little while. And seeing, like you said, just this, I can't imagine what that would be like as a child, not having somebody to mentor you along. So I think that businesses like AJ really speak to that. So we're on the topic of faith. And not everybody can necessarily point to a definite moment, but when do you believe this was that moment when you gave your life to Christ?
I think it happened a whole bunch of times. I mean, like there's like, I remember in Sunday school going up and get saved, and I grew up same thing. My parents are Christian. My grandparents are Christian. Grew up in the church. And there's definitely different times in my life where I went to give my life, right, to say the sinner's prayer and accept Jesus into my life. And it was actually when we were in Findlay. We go to New Life Assembly of God, and Pastor Dutch was teaching a sermon about how God doesn't want grandkids. He doesn't want you riding on the coattails of your parents. And that's what I did, right? You asked me like why I believe something. I'm like, well, that's what my mom always said to believe, or my dad always said to believe. And so to really take ownership of my faith and really do some of my own research, and, you know, I'm not perfect by any means, but have my own convictions about things. You know, that sermon that he preached, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago really got me digging on my own and not riding on my parents' coattails of their faith, but having my own faith.
Yeah, so that's the moment when you believe that you really became serious about your faith, when you start pursuing it, and really, like you said, made it your own. How did things change for you after that?
I've always like tried to help people, but that really that was probably the biggest change, really, and trying to embody that and just be that. I was that at church and that at work and that at home. That's just kind of who I am. I don't know. I think that was probably the biggest change, just that loving people where they're at for who they are and not having any preconceived notions about maybe what they can do for me or anything like that. I think those were some of the biggest changes when I started really taking ownership of my faith.
Yeah. Well, one of the big reasons why I asked you here today, actually, was because of a certain promotional that you did, I think it was last year, and it made headlines everywhere regarding there was a day where the profits from your store went to the employees. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. It was actually the gross sales, so it wasn't even the profits. It was every dollar that came in went back to the employees.
Oh, wow. But talk about that a little bit, because I'm very curious. What gave you that? I mean, a lot of what you said just now, to me makes total sense. But just for myself and the listeners, what gave you that idea? What led to that?
I think it was during COVID, and it was right kind of towards the beginning of that employee shortage where you go places and you just wait in line forever to be served at all, and then they're apologizing because only one other person showed up to work today. I mean, I heard stories from friends, and I think we all have stories over the last year and a half or so where it's just the service just wasn't up to par for whatever establishment you were at. And I'm sitting there looking at my staff, and I'm like, gosh, these guys have just been with me the whole time. I never really, sure, we had some times where like I wish I'd have had one or two more people, but we really functioned at a pretty high level because people just stuck around. And I'm like, I need to do something for these guys that speaks more than just like, hey, you did a good job today, so I go next door and get drinks for people. You know what I mean? Like Gatorade or juice or something that we don't serve at the pizza shop, something different, or go buy them ice cream or something, like something more than that, something more impactful that really would show how much I appreciate it. They've just been with me and stuck through all the crap that we've been dealing with for the last couple of years. So that was the driving force. That's
cool. So it was very much, it was genuine appreciation for your employees.
Yep.
I think that's very helpful, because I know lots of employees, they go on feeling unappreciated. They stick through it, and I don't mean to, because I know that as an owner, as an employer, that there's lots of challenges you have to go through, and you have to think about, man, how am I going to pay these people week to week? And I really think that caught people's attention, because like, wow, this guy, he's really gone above and beyond, because as much as people, I'm sure nobody ever complains about you, but
I hope not.
but as much as I've heard people complain about their employers, that everybody knows how big of a sacrifice that would be to say, all right, everything's going to the workers today. Oh man, I couldn't imagine. The type of money that you could have made on that day. I think that is an absolutely Christian principle right there. Just in using the term sacrifice. Let's just talk a little about the business itself. I don't know if you have insight to this, but what it plans to do in the future.
So the first store was it was in Tiffin, and I think there was a couple other stores that kind of opened, got their feet wet a little bit, and just didn't work out for a whole host of different reasons. Just happens sometimes. And my father-in-law actually went to Rhema Bible College in Oklahoma. So they moved down there with some friends and opened up 2 AJ's Heavenly Pizzas down there, one of which is still open today. So you can Google them. They're still there. So there's that one. I believe it was during that time, the A of the AJ's. So my father-in-law bought him out of the Tiffin location, and then he opened up in Fremont. So those 2 were kind of the only 2 stores for a while. And then the Dissel family, who managed at the Tiffin store for about a decade or longer, they opened one in Upper. And then after that, there was a store that opened in Fostoria that was there for several years. Lots of people remember that and wish we would come back to Fostoria. And then they closed. There was a store in Willard for a couple of years. Several years ago, we tried to really kick it into that, like, well, let's try to franchise this. There's a lot of, some of the reasons the other stores didn't work out was just lack of oversight. If we'd have been able to help them in a more efficient way, I think they would have been more successful and stuck around. So franchising allows that. It basically forces that. So we kind of went down that path a little bit, and then just, life gets crazy, and we didn't do everything we needed to do to get that launched. So I think that's probably the potential in the future, is that it'll be able to be franchised.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
In the future. So yeah, it'd be kind of neat to be able to do that. I know my father-in-law, that's something that he's really passionate about for his legacy.
No kidding, okay.
And he just wants to, it's still his passion, right, to get the word out on the pizza boxes. And if he can do that in 4 towns or all over Ohio or Michigan and Indiana too, or the whole United States, wherever God leads, I think, if we start taking the steps and that's what we're supposed to do, I think doors will start opening and it'll just happen.
So when you talk about that, I think about places like take Hobby Lobby or Chick-fil-A. And when I think about these types of businesses, they have a lot of impact. I mean, it seems like people really appreciate having a place they can go to that is a Christian-owned, open about their faith. Why do people get excited about that?
I don't necessarily know why people get passionate about it, but I know why they're successful. I think if you're doing God's will, I think He makes you successful beyond even what you're capable of.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what they're out there doing and representing and being true to that. I think God's just rewarding them for that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good redirect right there too, because it goes back to, it sounds like your father-in-law's original vision was to give glory to God, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's through pizza, and that's an unlikely means. A chicken sandwich was an unlikely means. Hobbies, crafts, those are unlikely means to be able to communicate God's word and God's love for humanity. But here we are. You got the Heavenly Pizza coat, you got the John 3:16 across it as well. And so people see that. I mean, people see your vehicles, they see your store, and there's just no denying that it's a Christian-owned business. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, what I find really impressive is that you guys put out an incredible product.
Thank you.
And you know what? That actually reminds me of something I was going to ask you. So let's say my first time, I've been to AJ's before, but let's say my first time going to AJ's Heavenly Pizza, and I'm looking for something to give me a good first impression. What do I go with?
Oh, man. I'm a big stickler on pepperoni pizza.
I knew you were going to say that. Pepperoni pizza.
Just pepperoni. It gives you you get good flavor for the quality of a couple of the ingredients. Like you can pick up like the quality of like the cheese. I mean, you can taste the sauce is really important. That's one of the things that sets us apart is our sweet sauce. I think, I don't want to say anybody can make a good specialty pizza, but really like you put enough stuff on it, right, and you're tasting just like the stuff, or you know what I mean. But like to get a good feeling for the quality of the product being created, you want something like just pepperoni, or even just a cheese pizza. We can really pick up on some of those core ingredients and the quality of that.
Going with the golden standard, the pepperoni pizza.
You can't beat it.
And I remember trying it at Balloon Fest, and honestly, now that I think about it, I think that Balloon Fest was the first time I had AJ's Heavenly Pizza, and it wasn't the last.
And we only served pepperoni. So
and you only served pepperoni, exactly. That's what I was going to get at. It was pepperoni pizza at Balloon Fest. So yeah, so if you haven't tried AJ's Heavenly Pizza yet, pepperoni pizza is where to go.
Here we go.
Okay. So we've had some bad weather here lately. And one thing that, and not going to lie, my mind goes here too. We need to get food. We don't really feel like making anything right now. Let's order pizza. What sorts of what sorts of tips would you give to people who are driving in inclement weather and delivering pizza?
It's kind of funny. It seems like it goes either one way or the other, right? People either tip you nothing for going out in the crappy weather, and they comment, they're like, "Man, it's really bad out there." Like, yeah, it's pretty terrible, and they're like, $0 tip. Or they're just the other way. They're just so grateful that you came out to them, and then you get the much larger tips. So there's not as much of those like $2 to $5 tips, which is pretty standard, tipping. You either get like zeros or like $10, $15, $20 tips, which I find odd, that especially because it's always the people that comment. They're like, "Man, it's really bad out there. Also, I'm not going to tip you for coming all the way."
So appreciate your pizza drivers for sure. Anybody that delivers food to your place during those times.
Absolutely.
We'll kind of change pace a little bit. So going back to whole faith on it. Favorite book of the Bible. What's your favorite book of the Bible?
Oh man, that's kind of a tough one.
You could cop out and just say the whole thing.
Yeah, I could. That's the one big book that holds all the books. That would have been a smart answer. That's good. Can I say the Gospels? Right, the Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, because they're kind of the same book, just from different perspectives.
Is there any particular gospel that stands out, or is just pretty much all of them?
Just pretty much all of them. Just the whole scope and right. I mean, learn about the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. That's the good news, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And from a Bible scholar perspective, I have to say that putting it together as all of them, there is actually. Well, I'll just put it this way. There's a beauty about that. Mm-hmm. The gospel writers, they did all have different perspectives on the events, describing mostly the same events, but from their own perspectives. But also sometimes they order the events differently, and so it makes you ask questions. And then your mind does this, has to do the exercise of piecing it together. At least for me, my imagination runs wild. I was like, where did this fall into place? And where did that fall into place? Did this happen twice? Or this only happened once, you know? In the Gospels, of course, that's where we find the story of Jesus Christ. And we learn specifically about what he did, how he did it, you know, the specific commands to his disciples and so forth. So, yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's really good. All right, now, favorite verse in the Bible?
Well, it's got to be John 3:16.
I was waiting for it. Yeah, John 3:16. I couldn't imagine why you said John 3:16.
Yeah, I know. Randomly popped into my head.
Just in case you've never seen an AJ's Heavenly Pizza box or anything, John 3:16 is printed on everything. Mm-hmm. So, Josh, let's say that somebody out there, say that it's a person of faith, that they want to be able to share their faith with other people, but they're not looking at going into ministry. What sorts of advice would you give somebody like that?
Live it.
Live it.
That's the best thing that you can do, right? You want people to look at you and be like, why are they, whatever it is, happy all the time? What makes you happy all the time? Mm-hmm. Right? And then that gives you an opportunity for that conversation to tell your story a little bit and share your ministry with people.
What about from like a business owner's perspective? Let's say that somebody has decided to go into business for themselves and they want to use use it as an outlet for their faith. What advice would you have for somebody in that situation?
Focus on your people, I think, is the biggest the biggest thing. Your closest to you that you see every day, that you work with all the time, and you can use that to minister to them and help them with stuff going on in their life.
And that's fulfilling what Jesus calls is essentially the second greatest command is to love your neighbor as yourself. And that's something when I talk to people about going to church, you know, it's hard to love somebody else without somebody else.
Right, yeah.
You have to have that other person.
Yeah, community is so important.
Yeah. So Josh, with the mission of AJ's Heavenly Pizza, again, we kind of discussed that that's bigger than just selling pizza. Mm-hmm. And, the involvement you have with people is just phenomenal. Again, the entire community has recognized that you guys have the same reputation just all around. I know people that have worked for you all. If there's one thing that you want people to know, not just about your business, but if there's one thing you want people just to know for their own lives, what would that be?
That's a pretty deep question.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really just follows like what you're saying about the second biggest commandment. You just love people. Just take people. We all got our stuff, right? And people just need to know that they're cared about. Yeah. No matter what they've got going on, you kind of meet them where they're at and help lift them up, right? It's about, just helping people be better people. And that in turn is going to help you be a better person.
You know, just in my experience in dealing with people in business settings, lots of times it's dog eat dog, and they think that the way to get ahead is to push other people down. It creates an environment that people feel less. Mm-hmm. You know, they get home from work and they feel. They feel like they wasted their day. They feel like their time is a waste, and they ask themselves, why on earth am I working where I'm working? And I have to say, I think I mentioned briefly that I know people that have worked at Heavenly Pizza, and I cannot think of one. I mean, that has said that, man, I need to get out of here. I remember a few friends of mine have delivered pizza to us from AJ's, and it's, I feel good for them that they're able to participate in your business in that sort of way. As it seems that you are the type of person that builds people up, cares about people. Josh, do you have any closing comments as we're wrapping up today? Any last thoughts you want to share?
None that I can think of. I think you hit everything pretty good.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Josh. Again, this is the Bill Sang Podcast. My name is Bill Sang. My guest today is Josh Elchert from AJ's Heavenly Pizza. If you haven't had AJ's Heavenly Pizza yet, make sure you do it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Black Swan Blues, take me home. Black Swan Blues, take me home.